Ted Wan is the Vice Chair and the Executive Committee member of the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. And his day job, he is the President of Greater China and Executive Committee member of Smith's Group PLC. He's a seasoned executive with diverse experience in industrial and automotive solutions with over 20 years of experience. So with that, we welcome Ted.
Thank you so much, Era. And first of all, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer of the TestConX China to give me this opportunity to share some of my views from China international business communities on how the current external environment will reshape the high-tech industries in China. Just one second, okay. So everybody in this planet is now facing a profound changes and unprecedented challenges. And the situation are getting highly fluid now and with a very volatile situations. So we have a new term, VUCA. VUCA world has four typical status: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. As the world just steps out of the pandemic, consequently, we are facing a heightened geopolitical conflicts. Russia's invasion to the Ukraine further elevated the globally supply chain disruption, inflation, and energy crisis. Well, as the world's largest industrial country, China's zero COVID policy will continue to remain the headline of the new generation of the Chinese government. This definitely will bring greater supply chain and inflation uncertainties to the world. So just 10 days ago, President Xi Jinping secured his third term as the General Secretary of the CPC. Well, 4 of his loyalists were elected a new member of the Political Bureau Standing Committee. No successor was identified, which implies President Xi intends for another term or even lifelong ruling. Xi's prolonged one-man rule breaks the norms of collective governance that the party had put in place after Chairman Mao's death. Xi's speech at the report are political statements made in an ideological settings. Specific policies and programs would not emerge until the National People's Congress meet in the next March. But the event has set the tone and indicated a clear direction of the travel, essentially that President Xi will continue in full control and adhere firmly to the course that he has set in his first 2 terms. So the CPC 20th Congress report re-emphasized China's long-term development priorities with no surprises. Such priorities include the technological innovation, the consumption-driven economic growth, the common prosperity, and the sustainability. The report does, however, place a stronger emphasis on the improving national security and economic security in the face of escalating the geopolitical tension between China and the West. Food, energy, and critical supply chain securities have been elevated to the priority level, which is equivalent to that of China's political system and ideology. To ensure the security and the long-term growth of the economy, the report also underlines China's continued search for new, higher quality growth. This specifically calls for the promotion of high value-added sectors, which include the advanced manufacturing, the digital economy, the artificial intelligence, the next generation information technology, biotech, new materials, high-end equipment, and the green industries. There were very little message from the report with regard to the zero COVID policy. So with the party's key media, their key messages, there's currently no timeline for moving away from the zero COVID policy. So President Xi also signaled that China's anticipate tensions with the escalated tensions with the West, especially the United States, to endure for foreseeable future, strengthening mechanism to encounter foreign sanctions and interference, and increasing China's influence in the world through the China-led multinational initiatives were among the measures highlighted to respond to this challenge. So I just hope that these slides give everybody some of the big, the backdrops on what really the domestic policies is going to moving towards to. So if you look at these slides, no doubt the Congress confirmed the stronger role for President Xi and the party in policy making. Mr. Xi is enhancing the political control in response to the rising security threats. She leans further into the nationalism to reassert the long-term goal of becoming the world top power. However, there's no indication of return to the market economy measure that Xi has reversed. Indeed, his report places still greater emphasis on the party and the state's control on the economy, with increased regulations of the private sectors, which could also in turn affect the environment for the multinational companies. Deep structural changes remain, and the pace of China GDP growth will be slowing down. Nevertheless, they remain positive in the outlook. The Chinese government will continue to focus on the real economy and seek to move the manufacturing sectors towards higher end, smarter and greener technologies and productions. It will continue to welcome foreign investment and further open its market to foreign business in the next several years to attract the foreign capital. Semi-business sector are in line with the Chinese industry priorities, which may enable the multinational semi-companies to continue to seek more business opportunities in China. And also, there will be more ambiguous and quick swings between the control ideology and the economic development and the social stability. So the government will choose at a different time period the priorities between the controls ideology versus economic development and the social stability. So these create a new gray zones for the business to navigate through in China. Whomever successfully adapt this new norm and navigate through will gain long-term benefit and leverage the China's increasing emphasis on the technological innovations. So the tensions and the competitions between China and the US will be further elevated with Xi's strong political pursuit. But the hardcore decoupling or conflicts possibility would be very low. In past decades, massive connections and inter-reliance on economy, supply chain, capital, technological, people, and cultural have been established between China and the West. Well, the possibilities of a constructive decoupling are increasing significantly. The key characteristic of the constructive decoupling is the semi-friendly, gradual, pragmatic decoupling. So, as a chamber, together with BritCham American Chamber and the EU Chamber, we did a lot of China surveys. All these surveys shows that despite the geopolitical challenges, multinational companies are still optimistic about doing the business in China. Key American and EU multinational companies are doubling down on their China business. Three key strategic priorities for our multinational peers are: number one, to be close to the market, and number two, to build competitiveness locally, and the number three is to reinforce the mechanism to ensure to leverage the strengths from each other. Well, with the recent the party's 20th Congress political movement, increasingly, as I spoke with a lot of peers, multinational companies, there's an increasing shift really from the multinational to prepare to shift from a just-in-time to a just-in-case strategy to manage any potential disruptions to the China operations. So inevitably, the deglobalization is the macro trend, and the world is shifting from global supply chain setup to a more regional, local supply chain setup. With Western countries' sanction elevation, we do see some supply chains are moving away from China. However, if you see the global supply chain is evolving on the basis of a cost and the safety, instead of merely the competitive advantage. R&D determines the power on the supply chains. As you can see the bottom right chart, which compares the China and the US R&D intensity on key industry sectors. China can dominate in most sectors, but the high-tech bottleneck is here to stay in some of the sectors. This has significant implications to some high-tech sectors such as semi. However, we need to understand, although the core semi IP stays in US, but Asia and also China are the regions have the largest consumption power, comprehensive downstream electronics value chain that most of the US and Western semi-chips players are heavily rely on. At the same time, no different from other industries, China's players are like a high silicon are catching up very quickly. So China's priority and will be mainly for domestic nature, focusing on higher efficiency, higher compliance, Chinese characteristics. Companies operating in China need to align messaging and operations in China with the government priorities, such as technological innovation, product and consumption, and quality upgrading, common prosperities, and also the sustainability. The companies also need to consider further increasing the investment in operations, R&D, and the talent localization to better adapt to the evolving China market and the regulatory environment. So policies, investment, and the talent will be centered around the key sectors dictated by the party's priority on two key focus. One is the national security, and another sector or the category is the bottleneck technologies. So the next generation of the IT and also the artificial intelligence are heavily rely on the robust computing capabilities that advanced semiconductor technologies will play the pivotal role. So the government will continue to support and encourage the semi-industry development, and the companies has a core, which the companies have a core technologies. So whomever you are, a Chinese company or the foreign multinational companies, as long as you have the advanced semiconductors IP, I would say in the next few years, still there's enough room for you to maneuver in China market in order to pursue more business opportunities. So as you can see the below chart, this is the comparison, the frequency of the keyword in the Parties Congress report since 2012. As you know, in 2012, the former China Party Secretary Hu Jintao delivered the 2012 report, and then President Xi Jinping delivered the 2017 and the 2022's report. So since 2012, the security, modern, and the science and technology are the top three world with the most significant increase. Science and technologies are the fundamentals to the China's security and the modernization. So when semi companies operate in China, we need to consider whom we should play together, or whom will be our biggest competitors. With China keeps building national campaigns, as you can see, this long list across industries. In the past decade, we see new China local premium players. They're targeting medium high quality segment. So to the multinationals, it's not about the market access or the protectionism. The key threats are the emerging local premium players. They're getting really competitive with the speed. Now it's not the big eat the small, it's the fast eat the slow. So the companies operate in China need to consider whether you have the strong local competence with the speed that match your Chinese competitors and the customers. And whom you compete with is the Chinese indigenous players rather than the multinational competitors. Equally, whom are your key customers? Is it the multinationals or the rising Chinese stars? So this is some of the really suggestions or observations I would like to really to share with everybody today, and hope this give you some of overlooking of the China's high-tech industries directions with this big backdrop of the countries and the parties' ambitions. So with that, wish everybody have a very successful business in China. Now I am handing over back to Ira.
Hi, Ted. Thank you, Ted. Let's see if you want to stop your screen share, and then we can do some questions. Okay. So, okay, great. Okay, so please use the chat window. Let me pull it up on my screen to put your questions in. Let's see. Hold on. Let me pull the chat window up. So we're waiting for some people to ask questions. Let me just start. You really touched upon this in your presentation, but what's your view on the evolution of the global and in maybe more specific, the China semiconductor supply chain based upon the new U.S. sanctions and the increasing geopolitical tensions? Do you want to delve into that?
Yeah. Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So sure. I think I would like to articulate my point probably from three different angles. Well, inevitably, as I mentioned, there's a macro trend of deglobalization for the supply chain. So traditionally, uh, in the past, really with the globalization, all the manufacturers have been enjoying the low cost and highly efficient global supply chain system. But with the geopolitical, the pandemic, everything we learned in the past few years, there's a macro trend to move away from the global supply chain to a more localized supply chain, which means to have the supply chains close to your customers and close to the countries where you mostly focusing on. I think that's really the macro trend. And also with this, the sanctions, as well as I mentioned, really, if you look at the U.S. and the China competition, both the world's largest powers see the artificial intelligence are really the key competence to compete to each other. With that, really the semi industry, which provide the advanced computing capabilities, is the key competence to support the artificial intelligence. So with that, actually, the both countries see this is the core technology, advanced technology that both countries want to be more reliant, self-sufficient. So what my personal view is, there will be increasing trend that is more of a local for local. Both for China and US, you will see the US government is going to has been encouraging the global semi players to really to set up and move back the operations in US. Well, to encountering the increasing sanctions and the pressures from U.S. side, the Chinese government are making significant investment in supporting the local Chinese players to accelerate the core IP development around the semi, as well as the talent competitions between the two countries, and as I know that the European unions is also start to look into this as the strategic kind of competence. What I would see is probably in the future there will be China, U.S. and EU as a three key regional market, both going to to invest to some extent when we're moving away from this global supply chain to some extent kind of a duplicated capabilities being built in each of the region.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that as a result, I mean, one of the main, maybe not as much in the front end, but more in the back end, and certainly in the box and the product assembly, companies have enjoyed the lower labor cost in China, but as that gets diversified, I don't see the labor costs going down in the U.S. So, are the product costs going to go up or?
So yeah, as I mentioned, really what determines the supply chain is going to be the number one is the cost, and the number two is the security, the supply chain security. That's what I see primarily when the multinationals making the supply chain, the global supply chain decisions. These are the two key decisions, two key factors to be considered. Interestingly, if you see, as I mentioned, another aspect, really, we also need to look at where the consumption power residing. So if you see the interesting thing is probably some of the colleagues or the audience participating in today's conference heard in the past few days. There's a kind of increasing report on the Foxconn COVID challenges in Henan, Zhengzhou province. There were over 30,000 workers works in Foxconn in Zhengzhou, which I think, based on the report, over more than 70% of the iPhones made globally, sales globally, are coming from these gigantic kind of factories in Zhengzhou. That's really the power of still, I think, to some extent, number one, demonstrate really the downstream, the electronic assemblies kind of value chains, the comprehensive value chains that China has established in the past decades. And other term is the huge consumption powers from China. So that's why I see inevitably, if you are global players in the upper stream, even the upper stream semi industry, you need the China is the country or the market is inevitable.
Mm-hmm. All roads lead to China.
Despite all these the challenges, the geopolitical sanction, and the new, the local, the elevated, the heightened local controls from the Chinese government. But that's everybody needs to, everybody is equal now. Everybody needs to really to learn how to navigate through this complex situation.
Yeah. So talking about complex situations, what's your view on the risks to Taiwan, involving Taiwan, especially when TSMC is based there, and I don't want to guess at what percentage of the world's semiconductors they build, but it's rather high. So is there a risk? Particularly if things get ugly. I know you had the different scenarios that a direct conflict would be, 10%, but do you think that, the Chinese government would use force to reabsorb Taiwan, and what would it mean to the semiconductor industry?
Yeah, I think there's a huge implications not only to the semi industry, but also to the whole world. So from my personal perspective, I think the risk still remains high, but for the longer term, but for the short term, I do not see there's a risk in the short term, because as you can see the party's Congress report, she did not change the government policy on Taiwan, whereas the report repeated the declaration in the 2017 version that the unification with Taiwan is the natural requirement for realizing the renovation of the Chinese nation. It reiterated the pursuit of a peaceful reunification through the deeper economic and the cultural engagement, which means that the Chinese party, the party and the Chinese government is still want to pursue the peaceful reunification as the first choice or the first priority. Well, inevitably, we need to notice there's a new phrase saying resolving the Taiwan issue is a matter for the Chinese themselves to decide. Explicit, pushback against increasing the support for Taiwan by the U.S. and its allies. So she added that Beijing absolutely does not promise to abandon the use of force in response to the foreign interference and the Taiwan independence activities, which means that really, I think in the short term, and also with the observation, the Chinese party and the leaders' observations of the of the result of Russian and Ukraine war. I think this is a wise choice that China is continue to pursue to reunification in a peaceful way rather than to use the force. But there's a kind of challenge, which is really, as the Chinese government reiterated or as a new statement, is this absolutely does the Beijing does not really promise to abandon the use of the force.
Yes, so a very delicate situation, but I think it's encouraging that the big picture is, I think, peaceful means would be more appropriate, and I think in everybody's best interest.
Yeah.
And I will apologize to the audience. The Billy audience was cut off, so you must have said one or two key words that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So but anyhow, let's focus on business. So, how would you suggest semiconductor testing suppliers compete or serve the China market? Is there anything that they need to do differently or they need to consider?
I think as a Smith, or I'm sitting in advanced engineering and the manufacturing committee of the BritCham. A lot of multinational, what really we are now with the big backdrop of this geopolitical, the deglobalization trend, more and more multinational companies are reevaluating their setups in China. And traditionally, especially for a lot of high-tech manufacturers, high-tech companies, used to just bring the IP from parent countries to China. And rather than to have the root ground up IPs generated from China, in China, for China. And even a lot of high-tech companies still made a lot of product outside China. But with this global macro trend and also the local Chinese political statement, I would really encourage the semi industry, the key players, to consider, as what I said, probably in the future, there will be a 3 key regional cluster market, China, US, and the EU, that inevitably, probably this is not good from economically for most of the semi, especially on the upstream semi industry, is heavily capex driven investment, but to some extent to duplicate some of the investment in the region for the region kind of strategy. I think one great example is the TCMC. They have a strong presence in Taiwan already, but they have been invited by the U.S. government to start to make a lot of investment in U.S. I think everybody needs to consider how they should remapping their capabilities and the supply chains in these 3 different regions, and how they're going to prioritize them. And so in this, I think there's 2 aspects. One is better in order to better capture the opportunities in the region. Second of all, is really, as I just said, it's a just in case scenarios. You got to weigh in the risk assessment and weigh in the just in case if there's something happens elsewhere or in China, what are some of the backup plans? Because as I see, a lot of the semi industry, because of the heavy capex investment, are still quite putting all the eggs in one basket kind of a situation. Yeah.
Right, and that's the challenge of, as you said, developing advanced process nodes, and it's very capital intensive, and it doesn't support a distributed distributed investment schemes. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. I thank you so much, Ted. Your viewpoint from where you're sitting is very important, and I very much appreciate you sharing your knowledge and the knowledge of the British Chamber from the Shanghai group. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ira.
Okay. And I'd like to once again thank the sponsors who've made this event possible, JDT Technology, Automation, and Intelligent Integrated Solutions and Support, and Smiths Interconnect, your global partner for innovative semiconductor test solutions, and Teradyne, enabling the next generation of technology through advanced test solutions. And with that, I will wish everybody a good rest of your day.